We're about to talk to Clay Travis. One of the topics that'll come up is Nick Saban last night announcing that Tony Mitchell, big DB recruit, suspended from team activities. Here's what Nick Saban said last night.
Tony Mitchell has been suspended from the team and all team activities until we gather more information about the situation and what his legal circumstance is. And, guys, everybody's got an opportunity to make choices and decisions. There's no such thing in being at the wrong place at the wrong time. You got to be responsible for who you're with, who you're around, and what you do, who you associate yourself with, and the situations that you put yourself in. So it is what it is, but there is, cause and effect when you make, choices and decisions that put you in bad situations.
Now, Nick Saban making those comments last night. Back in February, after a preliminary trial, Nate Oats had this to say about Brandon Miller's name coming up in that testimony.
You can't control everything anybody does outside of practice. Nobody knew that was going to happen. College kids are out. Brandon hasn't been in any type of trouble, nor is he in any type of trouble in this case, like in the wrong spot at the wrong time. I'm not here to make excuses, but I want to make it clear that I didn't have the details from the hearing that morning since I was coming straight from practice. And I used a poor choice of words, making it appear like I wasn't taking this tragic situation seriously, which we have throughout the course of it. I sincerely apologize for that.
Nate Oats walking that back. Clay Travis is about to join us. Last night, he tweets this. Nick Saban just eviscerated Nate Oats, directly ridiculing Oats, saying Brandon Miller was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was intentional by Saban, says Travis, who is likely furious that Alabama basketball is increasing heat on his football program. With that, we bring in Clay Travis now.
He is the founder of Outkick, Fox Sports, at Clay Travis on Twitter. What is up, Clay? How are you?
I'm doing well. Just back from 12 days in Italy. It's a fabulous country. Never been before. Hope to go back again. Absolutely incredible place. Maybe the coolest place I've ever been.
Was 12 days enough?
Well, I got the three boys with me. So, I like to travel. I could go somewhere and stay, a month. But with the three boys, they're 15, 12, and 8. I don't know how many years of spring break travel I'm going to have with them because they all have sports obligations and school obligations, and soon, they'll be super teenagers who are too cool to hang out with mom and dad. So I want to get as many trips in with them as I can right now. But it's very, I'm a history nerd. So we did a lot of not kid-friendly things. Like, I don't know that there's very many 8-year-olds who are like, hey, you know what I want to go do? I want to tour the Vatican. So I think 12 days was plenty for the crew that I had, but I think you could easily go to Italy for longer. And the trip to Europe, at least if you're not going nonstop, right? You're Nashville or Birmingham, you typically have to go through other cities. It's a big undertaking. So I think you need to go for at least 10 days if you're going to take a trip that long. It takes a couple of days to get over the jet lag at least.
Well, we'll say it's good to have you back. I'm not sure everyone says that about you, Clay, but the situation last night in Tuscaloosa, you get accused of sensationalizing things. I know you push back on that, and I've defended you on it. I do think you sensationalized this one a good bit. And
I don't.
Yeah, and I think you're going to end up being wrong. I think when Nick Saban meets the media again, which will likely be Thursday, Pro Day is Thursday in Tuscaloosa, local media are frequently there. If he is asked about this directly, he will make an apology to Nate Oats, or at least say that had absolutely nothing to do with Nate Oats, poor choice of words, something along those lines.
What he should be asked, and he won't be because most of the media in Alabama is terrified.
No, I think he will be. I think he'll be asked.
That's not true. He will be asked. And by the way, if he's not asked, he will come out and say it.
No, what he should be asked directly is, do you believe Nate Oats and the University of Alabama has perfectly handled the Brandon Miller situation? Would you do the exact same thing if he were a player on the Alabama football team.
He would never answer that. He would deflect that question.
That's what he should be asked, though.
Yeah,
Because
but
it's easy to
Well,
say,
well, let me
like,
ask you,
oh, I
if he
misspoke.
has
Like, I
shown
don't
up,
believe-
if he's
I
shown
don't
up to more
believe he
basketball
misspoke.
games this year than ever before, is he not already answering your question with his actions?
Was he at the NCAA tournament?
He was not.
He
No.
was not. He's getting ready for football. Was he at the
He
Kentucky
didn't have
game?
time. Well, hold on. He didn't have time to travel 50 miles down the road to Birmingham.
I'm actually told he was out of town. It was spring break, and the players and staff were gone because it was spring break, and he has traditionally gone out of town. So I don't know, and he will not be in Louisville either because they've started spring.
I think that Nick Saban is first of all, you guys agree he's, if not the smartest, one of the smartest coaches in college football.
Oh yes, absolutely,
No doubt.
Yeah.
And you guys know when he speaks at the podium in a press conference setting, he is typically taking that opportunity to send a message to everyone.
100%,
He answers
yes.
the questions as he chooses to answer them, no matter what he's asked.
I
And that's
agree-
what
I agree.
somebody who's a really good communicator does. You think Nick Saban unintentionally stepped in the biggest piece of crap that the Alabama athletic department has found itself in years?
yes,
He's
because
not smart
yes,
enough.
no, it's not that he's not smart
So you're
enough.
now arguing.
No. I think he was unaware. Nate Oates said that.
You think he was unaware that the
100%.
University of Alabama issued a press release
Yes.
apologizing for Nate Oates' comments? You think that he was unaware
I do.
of the media conflict?
No,
There's no way.
Clay, a couple of years ago, he was unaware it was a presidential election day. He literally
I think
said it from the
that-
podium.
I think that's part of his persona, right? Is that like he's so focused on football, he doesn't know what else is going on. He also weighed in on whether or not the filibuster should be signed off on a couple of months ago, right? So this idea that Nick Saban has no idea what's going on in the world, I think, is oftentimes a function that he puts on to make his team think, oh, all I focus on is football, right? And it's a fun caricature and everything else, and all he does is wake up and, put on the Weather Channel, and he has no idea what's going on. He's got blinders on. All those things are fun, but Nick Saban weighed in a few months ago on whether he thought the filibuster in an open letter should be extended or changed in the U.S. Congress. So I'm sorry, when you're weighing in on the filibuster, I find it hard to believe you don't know what day election.
I agree and disagree. I think he heard Nate Oates' comments, but I don't think this was intentional.
Then if it is, I disagree. I think it's intentional. I think when he walks it back, he'll have gotten all the attention that he wanted by sending the message, because it's going to be written about and talked about for 2 days before he decides to come back out and make a public commentary. And the public commentary that he makes by Thursday won't get a lot of attention. And I think that Nick Saban, I just refuse to believe that a guy as smart as he is would and is aware of what the media does and is aware of what they cover from his podium as he is. I just find it impossible to believe that he wasn't aware of what Nate Oates said.
So now you've created a situation where you can't be wrong. That if Nick Saban is asked about it and walks it back, well, he only walked it back because he already got the. I mean, now you've created a situation you can't be wrong.
Well, I mean, it's impossible for anybody to know other than Nick Saban.
Well,
right?
exactly.
That's
but
right.
but last night
But you act like you do.
So I'm
Yeah.
saying no, but I'm saying my opinion is this is not unintentional. I don't think Nick Saban does anything unintentional in the media,
Okay.
particularly from that podium when he knows he has an opportunity to send messages. So I think that, first of all, you guys know there is a massive collection of advisors in the University of Alabama. And the idea that this wouldn't be connected, his player misbehaving, to the Brandon Miller incident that's currently underway, the entire communication staff is talking to him and saying, hey, this is a sensitive issue because of what's going on with Alabama basketball, in case he didn't know otherwise. If Nick Saban was truly not aware, and if his staff did not prepare him to contemplate what the positions that would be taken from his comments were, then everybody in Alabama's communication staff should be fired. Because they're either afraid to talk to Nick Saban and sit down and be like, hey, look, you need to be aware of how this is going to play out. Probably don't use the phrase wrong place, wrong time, because it specifically was a huge flashpoint for the University of Alabama relating to Brandon Miller. Nate Oates had to apologize. We issued a full statement. This has been a huge mess. The easy answer for Nick Saban is I don't worry about how other people manage their programs. I've got so much on my plate, I'm not concerned. I think this was intentional by Nick Saban.
Clay, it's hard to, as you say, know what somebody's thinking when they said something and they're ad-libbing. Let's use this as an example. Rupert Murdoch, owner of Fox, under oath said that Fox analysts and anchors endorse lies when it comes to the 2020 election. Even though they didn't believe that. That's under oath. Rupert Murdoch said that. Now, I could sit here and say that included Clay Travis. It's my opinion that would include Clay Travis, who also is a Fox News contributor. Now, would I be wrong or would I be right? I could definitely get on any platform and say that, right?
You'd be factually wrong because I wasn't a Fox News employee in any of the time that involves the litigation that they're currently involved in.
But you are now, so I would say that as that stopped at that workplace now, as we sit here in 2020, I could sit here and say, okay, in my opinion, Clay is part of everything with Fox News that Rupert Murdoch is talking about. Now, I would just be making an assumption. I don't think I'd be right because I usually trust you when you're delivering the news on your show, right? So that's my opinion. But if I went on a platform and said that, I would be putting words in your mouth that may or may not be true, correct?
Well, you'd just be sharing your opinion of my opinion, which is what most of modern media is, right? So people can have whatever opinions they want on me for whatever subject under the sun they want to attribute them to. That doesn't bother me. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, just like I'm entitled to mine. My mom famously, I think one of her great quotes that I'm sure is echoed around through parents for generations is, opinions are like butts. Everybody's got one. So I don't get worked up about what people's opinions are of me, or even crazier, what people's opinions are of my opinions. Like, that's a weird kind of world to live in. And I understand that's on social media that so many people do. They're like running around. Jamie Horowitz, who used to run Fox Sports, had a great example of this. He said, like, and I think this is still true, you guys can look it up, Skip Bayless doesn't follow a single person on Twitter, right? I think that's still true. And he just uses Twitter to share his opinions. And he's like, why in the world would you go out and care what other people think about your opinions? Like, and if you take it outside of the social media universe, that would be like me walking down the street, walking up to random people and asking them what they think of my opinion. Like, there'll be a super weird thing to do, right? I think social media has created, and this is my new book, it's going to be out in September, we'll probably open top New York Times bestseller, just preview. And in my new book, I argue that social media has fundamentally distorted the way that we talk, right? And what I mean by that is this idea is that I should care, right? Like what somebody thinks about my opinion that I don't know, and that I should take that more seriously, right? And my analogy, take it outside of sports, is always like, I'm fundamentally anti-comedians being canceled, right? So I don't care what joke you tell, I will fight for your ability to tell that joke, right? And I think that's actually by far the majority opinion, right? But we've allowed a few people on Twitter to go back and be like, oh, so-and-so made this joke 12 years ago. They can't host the Oscars anymore. Like Kevin Hart can't host the Oscars because he made a joke 12 years ago on Twitter that somebody doesn't like, or the guy can't direct Guardians of the Galaxy, which is a really good movie, by the way, because he made a couple of jokes people don't like, right? So my point on that is we treat social media opinions more seriously than we do real life opinions. So if you were driving, what's the most popular comedy club in Birmingham?
The Comedy Club.
It's only one, Stardome.
Stardome.
Okay. Yeah, but Zany's here in Nashville, right?
Okay.
If you were driving down the road and you saw somebody holding a poster board protesting a comedian who was showing up at the Comedy Club in Birmingham, I bet every single one of you and every single person who's watching us right now would roll their eyes and they'd be like, man, what a total loser that guy is. Yet that person was willing to go stand in the sun, the rain, the snow, whatever it is. They got poster board. They made a sign. They were willing to put their own name and time and energy behind it. And in real life, we immediately say, man, what a loser. That same person has 10 anonymous Twitter accounts and goes through 12-year-old jokes and tries to get Kevin Hart canceled or Dave Chappelle or whoever it is, right? That's in the crossfire right now for jokes, and everybody's like, "Oh, let's take this seriously." So,
But
again,
shouldn't
big
Nick
picture-
Saban have the same right as the comedians you're going to defend in your book later this year to hold a news conference and
Soon to be
discipline
best-selling
and discipline his players with a phrase that I'm sure I could go back and look at 15 years of freaking Nick Saban news conferences.
Nobody's trying to cancel Nick Saban.
You-
Nick Saban could probably commit 8 murders and still coach the University of
Nick
Alabama. I don't know what the
Saban
number of bodies he'd have to be responsible
Nick
for.
Saban just
Over, under
eviscerated
how
Nate
many
Oats.
over under how many murder accusations Nick Saban would have to get to be forced to step down? Accusations.
I think
like
1.5.
Yeah, 1.5.
Nick Saban
One
just
and a half.
eviscerated
Yeah.
Nate Oats, directly ridiculing Oats. I mean, that's your opinion
my
there.
opinion.
That's what you said. Yeah.
Clay, I will say I find it interesting. All of these people that hate you follow you. I don't know why. I'm just one of those guys. If I don't like somebody, I just don't follow them. With that said, I do want to ask you this because I've thought about this before, and it was asked earlier before you came on, and I probably know the answer before I ask it, but it is an interesting question. Do you think if Brandon Miller was playing for Saban, Saban suspends him?
I think there's so many interesting questions and angles to think about, right? Yeah, I do think probably Nick Saban would suspend him. Now, let me explain, too. One football player is not as important as one basketball player, right? So I think you would probably have to change the hypothesis to if Brandon Miller was the starting quarterback for the University of Alabama, right? Because the best basketball player's got to be the functional equivalent of the quarterback. I do think Nick Saban would have suspended Brandon Miller because I think Nick Saban's position is I've already won whatever it is, 6 national championships. And we have to set a standard for what is acceptable at Alabama, and any one player is not above the culture that we create. I don't think that Nate Oats has set that standard. I don't think that Nate Oats has that, sort of power from a long record of success. And so I think Nate Oats, frankly, I think, again, and I've been critical of Nate Oats. I actually don't see this as much as a Nate Oats issue. To me, the person who bears the most blame here is the University of Alabama president. It doesn't surprise me that coaches want their best players to play, right? I think what is a surprise to me and has been a surprise from this get-go is the University of Alabama president is supposed to be a steward for the overall university. I think the vast majority of universities, given the exact same scenarios as are in play for Brandon Miller, would not allow Brandon Miller to be playing for them. Right. I mean, and you could just look.
Yeah, and I know you well enough to know you're dug in on your Brandon Miller opinion, and you're not changing that. I am curious. I don't know if you've had time to read the article from
Tuscaloosa Patch.
Tuscaloosa Patch that Ryan Phillips wrote. He was on our show yesterday. I'm curious, and again, I know you're not changing your stance on Brandon Miller. I'm curious if it made you change anything you've thought about that story, though.
Zero. Look, I mean, go back and listen to me a month ago, right? I focus on facts, and I've been a criminal defense attorney. The defense of this case, right, from the perspective of the 2 guys who've been charged with murder, if you look at all the facts, right, the established, undisputed facts, a mother is dead, and she was shot by the gun of an Alabama player by his friend, right? Those are undisputed facts. So the only possible way that you beat a murder charge is by arguing self-defense, right? That you needed to use that gun under fear of life, peril, death yourself. That is 100% going to be the criminal defense attorney's defense. And I've been a criminal defense attorney in murder cases, like in my life. So I know exactly what that process is. You have to go to the essence of the charge. And so the only way to beat this rap, they know the gun fired the shot that killed the woman, right? The only way to beat this rap is by arguing self-defense. So it is smart of a defense attorney to put out a self-defense claim. But that doesn't impact, to me, Brandon Miller's perspective. Because think about this. If you're an Alabama fan, your shifting logic here, right, has gone from first, Brandon Miller didn't know the gun was in the car. His own attorney just tells us that's not true, right? Brandon Miller knew the gun was in the car. Go read the defense attorney statement.
Yeah, to be clear, the attorney doesn't say that. You're saying by him not saying that, that's your point. Okay, go ahead.
Which is what a good defense attorney does, right? They allow people to take inferences that are not in there. He never says in his entire statement defending Brandon Miller Brandon Miller had no idea the gun was in the car, right? He never says that Brandon Miller didn't receive the text message saying, bring my gun here, right? He says that he was driving. He says he was already on the way there. He never says my client never received that text message, right? Probably because there is evidence that it was read and received, as many people who have iPhones will recognize, right? So if Brandon Miller knew the gun was in the car and he knew that he had been asked to bring the gun to his teammate, then that doesn't impact things at all, right? We know those two things are true based just on reading the defense attorney statement and all the things that have been testified in court. Again, I'm just focusing on facts. If both those things are true, are Alabama fans now trying to shift their argument from Brandon Miller didn't know he had a gun in the car and didn't know what the gun was going to be used for to Brandon Miller had to bring the gun to his teammate because his teammate was in mortal peril of death and he's actually a hero because he brought the gun?
No. Nobody's saying hero. Well, two things can be true at the same time. He could know the gun's in there, didn't read the text until he got back to the site.
Dunaway, stop.
Right.
His attorney, his defense attorney, who I'm sure is probably one of the most skilled defense attorneys in all of Alabama, right? He's not getting a crappy attorney. His defense attorney didn't say that.
Yeah.
And so you guys need to be clear about what the defense attorney said. Just go read his statement.
No, I actually agree with Clay on that. If Brandon Miller were asserting he didn't read the text, I think the defense attorney puts it in there.
That would be the strongest.
I agree. I do agree with you on that.
If I were his defense attorney, and again, look, I can easily pivot and be the prosecutor defense. I've done all this stuff, right? If I'm his defense attorney, the number one defense I want to put forward for Brandon Miller is this. He didn't know the gun was in the car, and he never received a text message asking him to bring the gun, right? His attorney doesn't say either of those things,
okay,
which
so
means
we've established that. That's so good. We're running out of time. Can I ask you this question? If they do end up being found innocent, not guilty by reason of self-defense, does that change your position at all? I mean, right now,
No,
Cedric Johnson is at large, right? Cedric Johnson, the other shooter's at large. Does it change your position at all?
It doesn't change what Brandon Miller did because, again, that's my point that I was making, is if you're arguing he needed to bring the gun because they needed it for self-defense, then you are arguing against he didn't know the gun was there and he didn't know that the text. And I don't believe that anybody in the Brandon Miller camp has said, oh, we wanted to bring that gun so that his teammate could defend him. So, no. Look, they may well beat the charges. And that's why I've said, go back and listen to me a month ago, I think the most likely scenario here is that Brandon Miller is actually testifying against his teammate and his teammate's friend and arguing that they fired first, and that's why he wasn't charged with a crime. In other words, he is a state witness who is going to refute the idea of self-defense by saying, I was there, I saw, they fired first. Now, to be fair, the defense attorney is going to say, who fired first may not matter, because if there was a weapon that was brandished, if you saw a gun and you thought they were going to fire first, they may be able to beat these charges. I don't know, but it doesn't change Brandon Miller's culpability, and in my opinion, the fact that the University of Alabama president should have stepped in and not allowed him to continue to have the privilege of representing Alabama in basketball.
The only thing I was asking you about, and that's why I tried to say I know you're not changing on Brandon Miller because I know you well enough to know that. Much of what has been reported in this case is based on statements by the boyfriend, Cedric Johnson, that have not been corroborated by anyone else, and now law enforcement can't even find the guy. I mean,
yeah, but what I'm focused on is just that is opinion, right? Judges decide facts of law, juries decide opinions, right? So what I'm focusing on is just I'm taking Brandon Miller's defense statement as truth, right? I'm taking everything his defense attorney is saying in that statement as true, and I'm also taking what people are saying under oath in that hearing as also true, right? Just focusing on the undisputed facts. Brandon Miller knew he had a gun. He knew that his teammate had asked for that gun, and he drove it to him, and a mother is dead directly because of Brandon Miller's actions. If Brandon Miller doesn't go there, that woman might still be alive, probably is. And so to me, that is a standard, not to mention 11 shots on, the corner in Tuscaloosa. That is a standard that is unacceptable behavior for an athlete to engage in. And I just point out, I think I tweeted about this as well, Ja Morant got suspended for brandishing a gun in a strip club that wasn't even his for 8 games by the NBA, and he's a professional athlete with all the protections of the CBA. He's not a student athlete playing in a privileged position. So I think, again, you guys are in Alabama. I understand Alabama fans are fired up. They want to go to the Final Four. But I think sometimes when you're inside of a story, you don't think about the way you look to the other 49 states. And Auburn, the thing that I've been making my career on since I started is, if Auburn's best basketball player had done the exact same thing, every story is the exact same, Alabama fans would be up in arms over what Auburn's doing. If you're not reacting the same way to your program as you are to your hated rival, that's called bias. And that, I think, is what is governing much of the Alabama fan reaction.
All right, Clay, thank you for the time. Always fun.
Appreciate y'all.
All right,
go to Italy if you get a chance.
All right, go to Italy if you get a chance. That's a great commercial on the way out for Italy. Clay with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.